What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video from the Bicycle Casino in Bell Gardens, California. You're tired of seeing the 2-3 at the Bicycle Casino? No worries. Today is a little bit different. We're playing the 5-5 in for $1,000 with our buddy Truman and our buddy Joello. First hand of note, we look down at the beautiful pocket kings from the under the gun position, and I raise it up to 15. Player on my left puts in the call, and the hijack now 3-bets us to $60. The action folds back around to us, and I think it's a pretty straightforward decision here. We don't want to just be flatting the $60 and inviting the middle position player to come in as well. We want to get this heads up here, and we want to build a pot with a great hand like pocket kings. We're only behind one hand, and you guys know what that is, so I put in the 4-bet here to $175. Sure enough, middle position gets out of the way, which we expected, and the hijack now goes into the tank. He thinks for a little while, but then ultimately decides on a 5-bet jam all in for $475. The action's back onto us, and for only $300 more, we have pocket kings here. Pretty no-brainer call for us. If we're behind aces, so be it. We're never folding kings pre-flop here in this situation. I stick in $300 more, and we're off to a run out. Flop comes 3, jack 4, pretty harmless. The turn comes to 8 of clubs, and the river comes to 5 of diamonds, so the only hand that catches up to us that we had beat pre-flop is pocket jacks, although I don't really expect him to be 5-bet shoving all in with pocket jacks. We're pretty stoked when our opponent turns over ace-king of diamonds here, and we turn over our pocket kings. We're going to take this $975 pot straight to the bank. Always great to start off the session with a big W, gets our confidence going, and we roll into the next hand here with ace-queen offsuit. Our buddy Joello in the hijack raises it up to $20, and you get called 3 ways here by the cutoff, button, and the small blind. We're in the big blind here, and we decide to go for the 3-bet to $140. We want to size up here and disincentivize the other players from calling. We don't want to go multi-way with a hand like ace-queen. I make it $140. Joello gets out of the way, but the cutoff and the button both put in the call, so going 3 ways here out of position to the flop. Flop's a decent one for our range. It comes king, deuce, 6 with 2 diamonds. We have the ace of diamonds in our hand, which is important to note. It could allow us to back into some flushes. I decide that this is a great board for us to go for a c-bet here. I make it $140 again, basically a third of the pot. The cutoff now doesn't think for too long before shoving all in for $550, and the button gets out of the way. The action's back onto us here, and we have a decision. Okay, not really too big of a decision because we only have ace high here, and the opponent shoves for $550. It's likely that he could be doing this with some draws, although we do block some of the draws having the ace of diamonds in our hand. That leads me to believe he has a hand something like king queen, king jack, just wants to get it in here and doesn't want to see another diamond. Nevertheless, I'm not calling another $410 here to go fishing. I toss my cards into the muck, and the opponent is going to take down that pot. Next hand of note, we look down at jack 10 of spades from the button. There's 1 limp to me, and I raise it up to $20, and now the small blind decides that's not enough money. He wants to pop it up to $60, puts in the 3-bet. When the action folds back around to us here, given the fact that we have the button and we have a pretty good hand, a suited jack 10 here, I'm not going to be folding for $40 more. We're going to be in position for the rest of the way, and we're sitting pretty deep here with him having me covered for $11.75 effective. I put in the additional $40. We're going heads up in position to the flop. $130 in the pot. The flop comes 8, 7, king, 2 spades. We flop a flush draw, and we're double gutted here. Any queen or any 9 would give us a straight. We're in a great position here, heads up in position. Small blind now bets really big. He bets 100 into 130. And normally this would be a scary bet to face here if we had a king. Obviously we wouldn't be folding, but with a hand as strong as we have here, jack 10 of spades, we're not going to be going anywhere. Wondering if any of you guys would go for the raise here on the flop, or if you'd wait to see what the turn card comes before doing anything else. Nevertheless, I throw in $100 and we're off to the turn. $330 in the pot comes a 5 of spades. Bang! We turn the flush. Absolute gin card for us here. It doesn't pair the board, so we're not really worried about that. We have the jack high flush, but now the opponent slows down and checks the action over to us. Not exactly the result we wanted to see here from the small blind, but I think if he had a strong king in his hand here and we bet pretty big here on the turn, I don't think he can fold to just 1 bet here. So for that reason, I decided to go for a pretty chunky bet here of $280. I like my sizing here because, like I just said, I don't think he's going to be folding a king to any kind of bet here, so I might as well size up and get some extra value from him. He takes a stack of purple chips, which here at the bike represents $25 a pop, and puts in $280 worth. So music to our ears, we're going off to the river. River's an interesting one. It comes to 5 of hearts, so now it pairs the 5. Don't really think it's going to be changing too much unless he had pocket 8s or pocket 7s, although I don't really think he's 3-betting those out of the small blind pre-flop. Sure enough, in flow, the small blind checks it over to us again here, and we have an interesting decision in terms of bet sizing. I'm never going to be checking this back here with the flush. If we bet and get raised, we can make a pretty easy fold here. So I decided to go for a third of the pot here and bet $320. I think this allows the opponent to call with a lot of his kings. We're not betting too big here. Sure enough, my bet sizing gets me paid off for an additional $320. He calls, we show our Jack 10 of spades, and he mucks his cards. We take down that $1,500 pot. Next hand of note, we look down at ace queen offsuit from the small blind. The cutoff limps and the button now raises it up to $20 and the action's on us. I think ace queen against the button's range here is going to have him dominated a large portion of the time, and for that reason I want to get more chips in the pot. I make it $70. The big blind and the cutoff limper get out of the way and the action's on the button. He throws in an additional $50 and we're going heads up out of position to the flop. $150 in the pot, the flop comes king high, king 4-8 with 2 spades. And like the last hand, we do have the suited ace to the board here, which is good to note. The action's on us here, and for the same reasons I like to go for a c-bet. Our range is going to contain a lot of kings in it here, so I bet a third of the pot for $45. Opponent doesn't think too long before throwing in $45 of his own chip stack, and we're off to the turn. Turn's a pretty bad card to represent the king on. It comes the king of clubs, thereby making it less likely that we do in fact have the king. For that reason, I don't want to just be blasting off into the opponent here when he calls on the flop, so I go for a check. Opponent now thinks for a little bit, but decides on a bet sizing here of $65. What is he representing here? We do have the nut flush draw blocked here with the ace of spades, so it makes it that a little bit less likely, and given the fact he's betting so small here on the turn for $65, around a quarter of the pot, I think he's just going to have a lot of kings here when he calls the flop. For that reason, I don't want to be fishing here again with ace queen, so I just toss my cards into the muck here. Interested to see what you guys think in the comments below. Should I be going for a raise here? Should I be going for a call here? Or do you guys like my decision of just tossing my cards and living to fight another battle? Next hand, ace queen again here, but on the button this time. The cutoff raises it up to $15. I think we need to be putting in the 3-bet here to go in position in a bigger pot against the cutoff. Ace queen is a very good hand here, so I decide on a bet sizing of $40. The action folds back around to the cutoff, who puts in the call, so with $90 in the pot, the flop comes king 5-4 with 2 hearts. Cutoff checks it over to us, which I expect him to do with his entire range here, and I decide to go for a 25% pot size bet here for $25. If you guys are thinking that's a pretty small bet, you are correct. Occasionally I like to spice in some smaller bets with my made hands as well as my bluffs to keep his entire range in. I'm experimenting with my bet sizing on flops and turns, so let me know down in the comments if you guys like small bets or if you just prefer a half pot size bet here for a c-bet. Nevertheless, my 5 yellow chips get called pretty quickly by the cutoff, so we're going off to the turn. Turn doesn't change too much. It comes the 5 of diamonds. We still have ace high here and the cutoff checks it in flow over to us again. This time when I get called on the flop, I think he's going to have a lot of kings and a lot of flush and straight draws, so I decide to go for a check back here and see what happens on the river. River comes the king of spades, giving us 2 pair, kings and 5s with an ace kicker, but the opponent now bets into us for $60. I think when he's leading out here, he has one of 2 hands. He either has a busted straight or flush draw, or he has kings full of 5s here and just leading out to get some value. I'm up a good amount in this session and I'm interested to see what he has here. I think there's a large chance that he does have one of the first things, a busted flush or straight draw. So I pay him off here. I put in $60 and he turns over king jack for the rivered boat. Fortunately, he got there, but the king of spades on the river made it less likely that he did in fact have a king. So I'm pretty happy with my call there, just not happy with the result. Next hand, we look down at 7-8 of hearts from the cutoff, and the straddle is on. I think we need to be mixing in some 3-bets with a hand like 7-8 suited here to go along with our ace-king, ace-queen, those type of good hands to keep us balanced. I decide on a bet here of $55 called by the hijack, button, and the small blind, so we're going 4 ways in a bloated pot here to the flop. Flop's a pretty bad one for our exact hand, but it could be good for our perceived range here. Comes king 4-3 with 1 heart. We don't really have any draws here. We need runner, 5-6 or something like that to give us a good hand. Additionally, we could go runner, hearts, but let's just see here what happens on the flop. The action checks to me, and with 3 other opponents in the pot, I don't really want to be taking a stab here. Occasionally I would be checking as well if I had a hand like king queen or king jack. So for those of you that say I'm not balanced, I'm also going to be checking my kings here as well as my flush and straight draws. The button now decides to pick up the speed here and bets $105. All the other players fold and it's back onto me. 8 high here, $105 is the bet that we're facing. I'm not going to be a hero today. I toss my cards into the muck and we're on to the next hand. 15-20 in our stack, we look down at pocket sixes from the under the gun +1 position. The straddle's on. I put in the call here just looking to set mine and get a lot of other people in the pot as well. Sure enough, the button and the big blind both call. It's up to the straddle now, who plays it nice and checks behind, so we're going 4 ways to the flop. $45 in the pot. The flop comes ace, ace, deuce, rainbow. When the action checks to me, I think about it for a second, and I think if the opponents had any ace in their hand, they'd be inclined to go for a raise pre-flop. So given that I have a pair and it's pretty hard to hit a pair and no limit hold'em, I decided to bet $15. The big blind is the only player who puts in the call, so going heads up to the turn. Turn comes the 8 of hearts, which doesn't change too much, although it does bring in the backdoor heart draw. The big blind checks to us. When we get called on the flop on a pretty dry board, it's likely that the opponent might have an ace. There's really no draws for him to be continuing with on the flop, so I decide to check behind and see what he does on the river. River comes the 10 of hearts, which brings in the backdoor heart draw, but the opponent checks it over to us for a 3rd time. I'm glad here to get to showdown for pretty cheap. I check it behind and I turn over my pocket sixes. The opponent shows jack deuce of clubs, so interesting that he continued on the flop there with a pair of 2s. We're happy to take down that $75 pot with our pair of 6s. I wish I was reporting to you guys, letting you know that I flopped quad 3s, but unfortunately it is another opponent at the table. Still, any sort of quads are very hard to hit and no limit hold'em, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. He wins a very sizable pot here, and is a very lucky man when he flops quad 3s on an ace high board. Let's assume that the other opponent has an ace of some sort. What luck that that guy had. Next hand, we look down at ace king offsuit from under the gun +1 position. We get called 3 ways by the button, small blind, and the big blind, so going 4 ways to the flop here with $60 in the pot. Finally, we connect with the board here. It comes ace 7-10. We have top pair, top kicker. Top, as Jamie Gold likes to say. With a lot of draws on the board here, I decided to start with a check. Pretty draw heavy board here, so I could be going for a bet. Fortunately, the action checks around, which is not the result we wanted to go for. When we check there on the flop and an opponent bets, we're going to be going for the check raise 100% of the time there. Just unlucky for us that it gets checked around. Turn now comes the 10 of clubs, which is not a great card because it's likely that an opponent may have tripped up here on the turn. I know this is super passive, but I decided to go for another check. If someone has a 10, they're going to be betting out, and I probably could just call them for a bet on the turn. I'm not going to be folding ace king, obviously. Additionally, if I check on the turn, I'm also going to be calling down some bluffs like some diamond draws or some straight draws. But if I just bet out here, the only hands that are really going to be calling me are hands that have me beat, and then occasionally some of the draws, although I expect some of the straight draws to fold. I don't think the diamond draws would though. I start with a check, which is pretty passive like I say, and all the other opponents decide to check as well, which is actually pretty good news because I think my ace king here is going to be good. The river comes the 5 of clubs, and the big blind now decides to bet out for $20. Could be going for a raise, but I just decided to go for the smooth flat call here for $20. The opponent shows ace 3 offsuit, and we turn over our ace king, which obviously has him out kicked. I think I played that hand pretty bad in my opinion. We could have got some extra value given the fact that he did have an ace and he had a pair on the flop. He would have called a bet there. There was just a lot going on the board, but feel free to roast me down in the comments. I know I played this one bad. I know I played it bad. I decided to rack up my chips and head to the cage, but not before we witness our friend Joello get in a 3-way all-in pot here. He had pocket queens. The opponents had aces and ace jack. He flopped a set of queens, and he's going to triple up here in a $2,200 pot. Glad that I left the table because Joello would not have got that exact hand if I was sitting there. One for the good guys. After watching our buddy take down a $2,200 pot, we rack up our chips and head to the cage. Alright guys, that does it from the Bicycle Casino. We got into the game for $1,000. We took a shot at the 5-5 with our buddy Truman and Yolo. Got out of the game for $1,580 there. So a nice profit of $580. If you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new, leave a comment down below, and as always, good luck on the felt. I'll check you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching to the end of my video. Click my head below to subscribe and stay in the loop. See you next time.